How much money do you need? It would seem like a stupid question, because the more money a person has, the better, the more he can afford and the wider his opportunities. And there seems to be no point in fixating on a specific amount. But maybe there is? No, I am not going to tell you in this article that you need to specify your goals in order to achieve them faster, that knowing exactly how much money you need will help you get it faster. I am going to approach this issue from another, less well-known, but very important side, to show you that each person has his own nut to crack and not everyone is able to digest a large piece. In addition, I want you to understand why not everyone needs to have a lot of money. After all, in the wrong hands, a large sum of money can become a big problem that will only make a person's life worse. So read the article carefully to the end, and you will understand that the question considered in it is not as stupid as it seems at first glance. So, why does a person need to know how much money he needs? He needs to know this in order to understand what opportunities he will gain with a certain amount of money and how he will use this opportunity, and what it will lead to. I will explain in more detail, because it is difficult to convey my bright thought right away, the essence of which I myself have been comprehending for quite a long time. If you think that you need money, then think first about what exactly you need it for. Then, ask yourself another question: to what extent do you really need what you need money for, and is this something worth the effort that you will need to make in order to earn, to get the amount of money you need, to get what you want to get? That is, ask yourself about the price of the amount of money you need. This is one of the laws of nature, according to which everything has its own price: every desire, every goal, every dream, every intention, in general, everything. It is very important to understand, because it is possible that your desire may be absolutely unnatural, that is, not so much yours as imposed on you, but at the same time it may cause you concern, not giving you peace. For example, money and power, which people dream of so much, often change these same people, and often not for the better, including for themselves. As a result, their life, in which there is almost everything, becomes worse, and the price they paid for it turns out to be too high. You understand that the procedure for obtaining money is associated with a number of decisions that must be made and with certain actions that must be taken, and therefore with inevitable consequences, which you must be prepared for in advance. There are many ways to make money. Money can be earned both with your own hands and with the hands of other people. It can be stolen, you can kill for it, you can betray because of it, and so on and so forth. But in any case, you will have to work hard to get the amount of money you need in the way you are interested in, and you will have to deal with the consequences that occur in the cases corresponding to your method of earning money. Therefore, decide for yourself what you should work hard for, how you will do it, and what consequences you will have to deal with in this or that case. That is, study very carefully the experience of other people who, firstly, had the amount of money that you want to have, and secondly, came to it the way you are going to come to it. You can learn how to earn more money from other articles on my site devoted to this issue. In the meantime, think about the price you will have to pay for the amount of money you need. Below, we will talk about how to manage the money for which you will do something. What will you do with the money? Let's turn on our imagination and imagine that we, although no, not we, but you, friends, now have money in exactly the amount you need. What will you do with them? What will you spend this money on? Think about what will happen after. I will probably not be mistaken if I assume that many of you will simply spend the money on all sorts of pleasures that everyone gravitates towards, without thinking about what will happen later, when the money runs out. Maybe you will not do this, maybe you have certain plans for life, I do not argue, but most people who get a large amount of money at their disposal in various ways do exactly this. A rare person, having come to big money, behaves quite rationally and does not give in to his weaknesses. Such people become great. There are people who know how to make easy money, for example, with the help of fraud, but having received it, they themselves become victims of fraudsters, spending this money in a not very reasonable way. Well, someone, having acquired a lot of money, can sew part of this money into a mattress, for the so-called rainy day, which happens quite often for many people who spend money recklessly. This is also not the best way to manage money, because savings are, of course, necessary, but when a person does nothing but save money, he does not use it for its intended purpose. Money is needed to spend it, the only question is how exactly to spend it. Therefore, returning to the question of how much money you need, you should look beyond this desire to understand what can happen after you receive this money. You will still want something, even when you get everything you dream of now, which means you will not find peace, which means it is better to immediately decide for yourself what do you really want from life and why. After all, the amount of money that each person needs, in his own opinion, only reflects the state in which he is currently, taking into account the peculiarities of his life. Well, it's like this. When you're hungry, you think about food, when you're thirsty, you think about water, when you have nowhere to live, you need a house, an apartment, and when you're alone, you need a woman/man. There are things we really need and things we don't want of our own free will. And we can only want what we know, as a rule. Therefore, you should decide what you need money for. After all, if you need it for senseless consumer spending, when you buy one thing or another, then money for you, in this case, is a drug that you need to regularly receive in the form of a certain dose, which will work for some time, and then you will again be ready to do anything for the sake of another dose of money. It's a vicious circle. That's why people take out consumer loans to buy constantly, because otherwise they feel inferior, they feel bad, they have withdrawal symptoms. Is it bad? Well, not that it's bad, but still, I don't think that you came into this world to just pass different things through yourself your whole life, for which you won't have enough money. After all, with such an approach to life, it's not the result that's important, but the constant striving for it. And what kind of life is it then, when the only goal in it is the striving for money, which you never have, and when it appears, it evaporates as quickly as water in the desert? Maybe you want something for which you don't constantly need to strive for a lot of money? Or let's put the question this way, maybe you can want something else for which you don't need to constantly strive for a lot of money. Think about alternatives, about, say, the possibility of acquiring a certain minimum with the help of a certain amount of money, in order to then do what you love, to which you would like to dedicate your life. Perhaps you should start your own business, and then you will think not so much about money as about its development, and money will become a natural consequence of your activity. Or maybe you don't need money at all? Let's talk about that too. Does a person need money? When talking about how much money you need and what you might need it for, we need to think about whether you need it at all. It's clear that you can't live without money at all, but in some specific cases, you can do without it when trying to solve a particular problem or task. Let's say you want to start your own business and don't know where to get money for it, so you might need exactly the amount of money you need to open the business. In this case, it's worth thinking about other options for starting a business where you don't need money for it, or you need it, but in a much smaller amount that you can get. There are always such options, I can tell you that for sure. Or another example, a young guy wants to meet a girl, but because of his lack of self-confidence, he thinks that to do this he needs to have a cool car, a ton of money, and all sorts of other things that chicks bite on. It is quite obvious that you can meet even a really cool girl without money, you just need to find out how to do it, in the sense, how to hit on a specific girl, having studied her preferences. To do this, you need self-confidence, you need charisma, you need to be an interesting person who knows how to speak beautifully and do beautiful things. Then the girls themselves will spend money on such a cool guy, just to be with him. So you need to look at each specific situation more broadly, so as not to reduce all problems and tasks exclusively to money. If you suddenly do not know what you will do with your money when you have as much of it as you want to have, based on the principle, the more the better, then maybe you do not need it at all? For now, at least. No, well, think for yourself what it means to have a lot of money. It means that you need to be able to manage it wisely. They need to be stored somewhere, invested in something, protected, spent wisely so as not to squander it all, and make sure that the source of this money does not dry up. And if you do not know how to do this, then imagine what kind of stress you will subject yourself to when dealing with large amounts of money. You probably need a lot of money. And large amounts of money require a special attitude. I will even say this: too much money can cause you significant harm, because having tasted the benefits available for this money once, you will certainly want to do it again and again, but your cash flows can dry up, both in the form of salary and in the form of other income. As a result, a person can go crazy or depressed and do stupid things. Therefore, you need to be mentally prepared for any money. After all, a person and money must match each other's capabilities. You can't give too much money to a fool, so that he doesn't do stupid things, and it is impossible to live in poverty if you are very smart, since a smart person will always find a way to provide himself with the amount of money he needs, or rather resources. So what do you really need? Money, in a certain, sufficient amount, to buy what you want to buy with it, what you need, or what allows you to get this money. These can be some assets, that is, chickens that lay golden eggs, or some of your skills and knowledge, thanks to which you can solve certain problems and thus get money. Perhaps you should think not so much about the money itself, but about the sources of money, about the so-called cash flows, the presence of which and the stability of their work will be a reliable foundation for your financial well-being. This is, of course, a smarter desire and a more competent question than the question of the amount of money you need, but if you dig deeper, you and I will understand that even cash flows are not as important as the ability to create them. That is, the skill of making money is more important not only than the money itself, but also its sources. But you will never come to this understanding and this skill if you only want money, especially to stimulate your unnatural needs. And you will not be able to learn to manage money if your desires run ahead of your income. This is when a person not only spends everything he has, but also gets into debt up to his ears, tying himself up with obligations hand and foot. In general, read my first article about what money is, and decide for yourself what you are personally willing to sacrifice for it. After all, bad and good money differ from each other in the price we are willing to pay for it. Natural needs. No matter how much you want money, you don't really need too much of it if you are going to satisfy only your natural needs, without which your life is impossible. A person needs food to maintain the performance of his body, he needs clothes so that he can go outside, a roof over his head to feel comfortable in any weather conditions, and so on. There are not so many of these natural needs, and the rest is secondary, or does not make sense at all, but it requires a lot of money, which must be somehow obtained. A person does not need much money to satisfy his natural needs. Even the most miserable job can satisfy these very needs with the salary that is due for it. But I do not urge you to live a modest life and limit yourself in your desires. To hell with asceticism, live the way you want. After all, everything that people are willing to pay money for makes their lives more fulfilling and interesting. On the contrary, I want you to be ready to aim for the most luxurious and richest life after satisfying your natural needs. But you must prepare yourself for this life, step by step approaching more and more money. Do not wish for too much at once, move towards the better gradually. Think about what will make you better, because by becoming better, you will improve your life and prepare yourself for more money. It is not how much money you need that matters, but who you need to become in order to have the amount of money you need. A fool with money is like spirits in an infantry fighting vehicle. 2 drunken spirits in an infantry fighting vehicle are scarier than a company of airborne troops. He will only add problems to himself and to other people. We wish for big money, but in general, I believe that you need to wish for a lot of money, not for the sake of the money itself, of course, but for the sake of the great deeds for which you need it. Then you will definitely have it. The more grandiose your plans, the more you will achieve in life. But you need to start small and gradually move towards more. I know many examples when people who wanted everything at once found themselves in a swamp from which they could not get out. As I wrote at the very beginning, every nut you want to crack should be within your teeth. We always want more than we are really capable of, which makes our desire desirable. But so that desires do not diverge too much from our capabilities, we need to pull them, these capabilities, to our desires, but gradually, so as not to overexert ourselves. This means that we need to break our desires into wishes that are feasible for us to implement in the short term. Simply put, if you want to earn 1,000,000, start with 1,000, and then gradually increase your capabilities, with the help of increasingly complex desires, in order to ultimately lead yourself to your main desire. Learn to gradually tame money so that it obeys you and does not slip through your fingers, and does not ask for stupid and harmful things for you and other people. Money allows you to work miracles if you use it wisely. You can buy people with it, who will either build or destroy for your money. When you buy a person, you feel power over him, and therefore, you can change the reality around you in a way that suits you, making your life as comfortable as possible, and the world better. For reasonable people, money is a builder, and for unreasonable people, it is a destroyer. Naturally, in order to constantly change everything for yourself, to feel safe from encroachments on your wealth, you need to have a lot of money, and for this you yourself must constantly improve, because big money requires certain qualities from a person, without which it will not stay with him. The exact amount that you may need does not matter, as we have found out. What matters is the understanding of why money is needed, how to earn it, and how to develop yourself in order to earn this money, as well as the desire to live a decent life. Money, after all, is not so important in itself, it is only a consequence of a certain activity. And the activity can be different. You can work at a terrible job and get paid well, or you can work at a job that makes you happy. Which is better? It's up to you. And the question of whether money makes a person free is all the easier the more often we see people who are tormented by life, who have a lot of money, but who work too much for it and at a job that is not the most pleasant for them. After all, as you remember, everything has its price. And in some cases, it is not the money that is important at all, but the opportunities that you have. Let's say you decide to become the president of the country. Will the money matter to you if you become it? Obviously, it will not, because when you come to power, you will have a lot of this money, and do not ask why, you will only redirect it in the right way in those directions that you consider important. You yourself will not need the money so much if you have power, because no power will remain without a piece of bread, while the question of how to maintain this power will become a priority. Questions about money. Finally, I want to say that any questions about money require careful and complete consideration. There is no point in simply stating the fact that you need such and such an amount of money, for such and such a purpose, or simply to have it. You must always understand what needs to be done to get this money, and what consequences will result for you, both the method of getting the money and the achievement of the goal for which you plan to get it. So, dear readers, it is not the amount of money that should be discussed in your life, but the life itself, your life, that is, what you want to see it as and who you want to become in order to have everything you need. If you do not have money, then think about what to do when you do not have money so that it appears. It is pointless to think about the money itself, you need to think about what brings it. They say that happiness is not in money. And they are right, but this happiness, is not in its quantity, and not even in the cash flows that you can have. Happiness is in your ability to set goals and achieve them. To be more precise, it is in you yourself, in who you consider yourself and who you really are. What is the point of having a lot of money if you yourself are of no interest or use to anyone, because money should bring us closer to people, not push us away from them? And why do you need a lot of money if you don't see the light of day for the sake of earning it? What is the point of living a life in which you spend most of your time at work, which in turn may be of absolutely no interest to you? I don't know about you, but for me, These and other similar questions are much more important than the question of how much money I need, because before answering it, I must decide how I want to live my life.